knowledge that I've been taught when I was at school. I'm an investor, a business owner, and a money educator. Understand it better. Compound interest, cash flow, budgeting, investments, recover from debt. No one explained to me, put your money to work. It's about normalising the conversation. Hey everyone, it's Sarah Poynton. Welcome back to the Money Mechanics podcast. I'm very excited to be hanging out with Sam Teale today. So Sam is a 23-year-old award-winning entrepreneur. His company is Sam Teale Productions. Sam, thank you so much for being here. Do you want to tell these lovely people what you do?
Thank you very much for having me. It is a great honour. Like I said, my name's Sam. I'm 23. I started this business when I was 17. We're an award-winning video production company. We've got 11 staff now, 2 job adverts out, which is nuts for next year. So we're growing massively. We make the most emotional video content. I like to make people. I think the industry of video now getting a bit boring. People are making videos and not remembering or realising the power that we have in our hands. So. Yeah, we try and make the most emotive stuff. And then the final part is that we've got a very young team, average age of 23, and I'm trying to give as many young people mad opportunities. And yeah, it's the best job in the world.
Amazing. So this podcast is obviously all about money. So the first thing I'm going to ask you is, can you think what your earliest money memory is?
Yeah, so I had this conversation last night with my dad, to be fair. I don't know if my dad will mind saying, he won't. My dad is very much kind of, sensitive about money, if that makes sense. I remember my first memory first big memory was 2 memories actually. I remember being young and coming out of Morrison's actually, and my mum and dad being worried about the washing machine being broken, trying to afford a new one. And I don't remember exactly how I felt, but I knew it didn't feel nice. It was like, money's like this weird thing in our family that causes quite a few arguments, and it's you can feel the power of it. But then the result of that was the next day I was in a car with my mum and my auntie. It was coming back from, I think it was like a dog show or something, and I was maybe 9 or 10 at the time, and I had a phone, and my phone rang, and my dad's like, "Sam, where are you?" I'm like, "I'm in the car with mum. Why haven't you rung mum?" He was like, "How far away are you?" I'm like, 5 minutes, whatever. Got back home. We all get out of the car, walk towards the house, and my dad sat on the step of my house. I'm like, "What's happening here?" Anyway, we walk towards the house, he walks towards my mum, and then she starts screaming, and they won like £100,000 on the lottery, which was crazy. So it was like, but what was nuts about that was I literally relate those 2 things happening side by side, literally days apart, them worrying about money and then them somehow winning money on the lucky dip, which I got none of, by the way. Just want to say the business is not a result of them winning the lottery. But yeah, that's my earliest memory, I would say.
Amazing. How do you think that memory has carved out your relationship with money over time?
I think that memory, well, the first bit of that memory is being worried about money. I'd never want that. And it's not, I don't have a business to make money. It's a sub-product of it. And it's not like I started this to be rich and I'm not rich. Point that I'm trying to say is I know that I do not want money to be something for me to worry about, something for my family to have to worry about, like they did in that Morrison's trip, if that makes sense. And also, second part is I don't want to have to be reliant on, and this sounds really negative, and I don't mean it to be, but I don't have to be reliant on someone else or I want to be like self-made, if that makes sense.
In control of your own money and your own financial destiny, I suppose. And you want to not have to worry about having enough of it that if the washing machine goes that you can't afford to fix it.
Exactly. I remember one key memory actually was when I was a kid. Actually, my older cousin took me to the shop, and she was like, "Pick a sweet," and I picked one, and she went, "Get another one," and I couldn't believe that I was allowed more than one sweet in the shop, and I was like, "Oh my god!" And I picked another one up. She was like, "Get another one." I was like, I couldn't compute that I could buy more than one pack of sweets at this shop. But again, that reiterates the same fact. I want to be like that. I want to be able to go into a shop and not look at the price and buy 3 packs of sweets if I want. Yeah.
Okay. So when you say then, like, you're not worried about being rich, like rich is not a thing that you connect with. Like, you have your business, you do your business because you love what you do. Money is a consequence of it. Do you think that so when you use the term rich, like, what do you mean when you say I'm not really worried about being rich? What do you define that as? Because in my brain, being rich is not having to look at prices. So yours is obviously different because you don't want to be rich, but you want to not have to look at prices. So define what you mean by rich.
I guess rich means, like, in my head, retired, you've got too much money, that type of vibe. I'd love to get there one day.
Too much. That's interesting.
Too much. Yeah. I guess where I want to be at is maybe your definition of rich. I want to not have to worry about prices. I want to be able to buy what I want, travel where I want, but then also provide for, like, the team that I have here, for like my family. I got to buy my sister a car when she turned 17, and that was amazing. I did a thing the other day with a team where we had like a £500 holiday voucher. I love that type of thing, and I've just booked a trip for the whole team next year to go to Portugal for a few days as well, because I love being able to do that. So point I'm trying to make is my definition of rich is like more like maybe like Elon Musk, if that makes sense. Whereas
you mean the richest man that there is?
Yeah, that's what jumps to mind in the first instance of rich. But I would like to live. I think that's what the definition of rich in my head is. You're not working, you got loads of money. That's what I think rich means to me, and I will never not be at work. So
you're being in a financial position where you've got enough, whether you get up and go to work that day or not, you can still afford everything. You could take time off. You can provide for your team, for your family, for your kids, parents, whatever it is. That for you, it's that kind of position of, I suppose, financially being free, in that you can have anything that you want, whether you get up and go to work or not.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Do you think that everybody should want to be rich, wealthy enough that they have that in their life?
That's a great question. Yes, but with a little asterisk next to it, because
go on.
I feel like it's I think everyone can want that, but then there's got to be looking at situations and every individual person's kind of circumstance, if that makes sense. That's how I'd say that. I think it is nice for everyone to think about, but I also don't believe everyone should believe it if maybe they're not able to do that, and then it becomes a bit of a reason for them to be unhappy. Do you know what I'm trying to say? I think
that makes sense.
It's kind of living. I think everyone can live a life where they can live like financial freedom, can have financial freedom. It goes back to everything that I talk about in relation to believing in yourself massively and not giving up. And if you do that consistently, the subproduct of that will be not having to worry about money.
Right.
But people cannot do that for a multitude of reasons. And then I don't want to be like, oh, everyone should be in this way, because it's not possible for everybody else.
That's fine. So let's talk a little bit. And again, we had this conversation when we were in London. I don't like to bring up your age a lot, because I think sometimes you're a young entrepreneur, and actually I just think you're a really fucking great businessman, and I think you've done incredibly well. You just happen to have done it when you're younger. As a young person in business, do you think that your approach to money is different to, let's say, someone that does something similar to you but who is in their 50s? Do you think your approach to it and your attitude to money in business is different? Okay, a very short interruption of the episode, so I want you to get back to listening. I just wanted to remind you that the Money Mechanics weekly newsletter is completely free, and we'll send this out to you every week. All you've got to do is find the link in the show notes and get signed up. When we send this out to you, this weekly newsletter is going to include things that will help you to become a better money mechanic. It could be things like what's happening in the markets, things like budgets, how that's going to impact you. And I'm also going to share a lot of insight into what I'm doing in my own portfolio and in the portfolio of the guests we've got on the podcast, to really just help you understand what you could do differently to make your money work as best as it can for you. Make sure you go and find that link and get signed up.
Yeah, I think maybe I maybe take more risks, and I don't really think about the numbers that much, which is a positive and a negative. I think the growth that we've had this past year and the opportunities that we've been able to have has been down to that fact. And to be fair, looking back at my journey, like, my first hire was totally done on vibes. Like, I didn't know if we could afford them. I was like, yeah, my gut feels like we can hire now. And likewise, that was my second and third and fourth hire until I hired a BD, until I hired Gemma, like at the start of the year. And then we started looking at profit and loss and properly working out like what we can and what we can't afford, and kind of forecasting that stuff. Because I also believe in money is everything, but also it's also not everything.
It's also nothing,
I think it's there's a lot of, again, nuances in relations to the feelings that you have for people, and whether like I remember there was one of the guys that I hired that I knew I couldn't afford, but I absolutely knew the value that it would add. And I was, so it was kind of like I told him to hold his horses a little bit. I was like, relax, give me a month. And then he came in, and that was the best decision I've ever made. And someone else who was older than me, who maybe cared more about money, wouldn't even have allowed themselves to have that conversation, get themselves excited. But therefore the payoff we've had right now in the future is massive. So yeah, I think that's one of the big things. And yeah. And in the cheekiness as well.
Do you genuinely think that's just because at the moment, at 23 years old versus someone who's in their 50s, you, on paper, again, I don't think this is accurately a factual sentence, but on paper, you've got less to lose than someone like that, because 100%. Actually you're young, and you know what, if you had to go back to the start, you've still got loads of time and you still know what you know, right?
Yeah.
It allows you to take a bit more of a risk on the things that you're doing.
100%. And I think that lesson then for any young person, I think always should be like, have a go now while you can. I think hopefully, touch wood, we're in a good place and I won't have to go back to zero. But that's always a possibility. But like you talk about, when I first started, I started making videos when I was like 17, still at school. And then therefore my problem, there was no risk there. I was still at home. I'm still at home now, to be fair. And then it got a little bit busier as like you have that gap between year 11 and between college, where you have like 6-7 weeks off, and I start getting busier. And then it was a case of, I'm not going to go to college because I feel like I've got a big enough opportunity here. And it's like those baby little steps, but knowing that the support I have underneath me was, as you say, like very decent. So yeah, but then I also do believe as well that there's you'll know this, that a lot of people limit themselves or label themselves as people that can't get out of their current situation, and therefore use that as a reason not to start a business or take a risk. I was at school the other day, I did a talk, and I was speaking to one of the teachers, and they're like, oh, if I weren't a teacher, the one thing I'd love to do is set design. I was like, why don't you do it then? Why don't you do it? And she's like, oh yeah, but I'm a teacher now. I'm like, yeah, you are a teacher now, but you don't have to be a teacher this time next year. No. And also, if you went on some sets on a weekend, or there's a way that you can dip your toe into the industry and then kind of transition like that. But a lot of people are too scared of that first step.
That's so interesting. So like, we talk to clients all the time, and we say, you know, lots of people say to me, I wish I could be an investor. And I say, well, why don't you do it then? And they're like, well, you know, because I'm not there yet, and I need to wait until my business is making more money, or until I get this point in my career, or I need to wait till the kids have left home. Or there's always a reason why they can't do it. And I think to myself, that doesn't make any sense, because you can become an investor with 10 quid. Like you can buy a share in a company for like 10 quid, £3.50. Like you don't need a lot of money. You move from being not an investor to an investor. All right, you're not an investor that's living on their investments yet, but you never get to that point until you've bought your first share, till you've bought your first house, bought your first things, right? So that whole just take one step towards the outcome that you're looking for is such good advice. And for someone who's 23, Sam, you know, I find you just inspiring. It's amazing, this your attitude to stuff. You mentioned school, so let's talk a little bit about school. You went from school to college to your business, right?
No, I skipped college.
Okay.
Yeah.
So school up until year 11 then?
Yeah.
Probably more recently than any other guest we've ever had on the podcast, right? What is school currently doing, do you think, to prepare kids for the journey of personal finance? Anything? Or
no.
Is there something? Or?
In my case, nothing at all. So year 9 or year 10, when you choose your options, I didn't have a clue what I wanted to do. So I think I chose computer science, IT, which is basically the same thing, and then business. And I thought business might teach me some bits that are interesting. There's not one thing I think that I learned in that 2-year period studying business that I use now, owning a business, which is crazy. There's like, here's what profit is, here's what gross net profit is, that type of thing, which that's important. But yeah, the bits that would have actually been important would have been, as you mentioned earlier, about how simple it is to invest, and that we should now start at my age as early as possible by even, just like you said, a few pounds, just whacking every month into the S&P 500 or something, just so it can start building up in the background. But we're not taught that. Instead, we're taught, how to just get a job and like write a CV, which is crazy. And I think looking at like my journey then from school to a business, I was speaking to teachers and stuff. And this is not a school issue. It's more a societal issue. But I remember speaking to my IT teacher and he said, "What are you doing after school?" And I was like, "I'm going to start a production company." And he was like, "No, you're not. Like, you can't do that. You got to go to college." And then I went to my careers advisor and I was like, "I do not think I want to go to college because I think this is happening in the background and I want to put my all into it. I've got to take a risk." She's like, "Well, take a place at college and then just don't go." And I'm like, "Well, but then that's taking someone else's place." Like, there's no perfect outcome in the way that school meets business. And it's even like little bits. Like when I started the business, I was on a call in lockdown because I got myself invited to a BNI call, and there's an accountant on there called Sarah, and I asked for a one-to-one afterwards, plucked up the courage for a one-to-one, and I just said, "How do you start a business?" And she guided me through Companies Made Simple online, and I founded the business that day. And then it's been slowly picking up like lessons, like speaking to someone, she's like, "Do you charge profit on your jobs?" I'm like, "Profit on my jobs? Actually, no, I don't." And it's like, "All right, okay, let's price in this particular way." And then it's like, I don't know, corporation tax comes in, the bill comes in, and it's like, it's coming out of the current account. And then my accountant's like, "Why do you have a separate pot?" I'm like, "Oh my God, that's like an incredible shout." And then same with VAT and that type of thing. It's been a gradual kind of progression as I've learned along the way and made mistakes. Whereas that could have all been kind of lessons with a case study that had been really helpful during school, but that's just not happened. And then it's even little bits like when I left school, I got a message from someone at school and he was like, "Oh, can I invest in your company?" And it was like when it was just me, it was like early days. It's like that issue then of people not knowing company structures and then how that all works. And it's it's sad to be fair, because I think there's a lot of entrepreneurial kids out there, but unless you've got it's all about role models I go back to, and my role models, thankfully, were like YouTubers that had businesses, and that's literally what I wanted to be then. And if young people don't have that, then them knowing how to get from A to B is quite difficult unless they're confident enough to ask loads of questions, but then also to get in those rooms and speak to the right people. I was very lucky that the people I took advice from were decent. But then I had this accountant that helped me set up the business. I'm still with her now, Sarah. She's fantastic. Did all that. She sent me prices over to like be my accountant, and it was like far too much. And my dad's like, "No, you're not paying that. That's far too much. Here's my mate, or someone that he uses." And then I just didn't understand any of the numbers. I felt really scared when he talked to me. I was like, I kind of got nervous every time he came to the office. And then I move over to my new accountant, and it's like he's done my numbers wrong, and it's made out that I've taken like I've been an employee in my own business when I've not even had PAYE set up, and it's all that. And then my new accountant had to read all my old numbers, and it was all that stress of even more, and it's nuts.
This is such a really important lesson, right? And this doesn't just go for entrepreneurs. So there's a lot of people that listen to this who've got jobs or are, retired or whatever. And there's lots of people who are entrepreneurial as well. Lots of people who are investors. My granddad taught me, and I think it's the same thing you're saying, is get the best advice you can afford at the time from the best, most qualified person that you can get it from. Because when you go cheap, when you go like with your mate's uncle's dog's brother's cousin who happens to know how to do a bit of bookkeeping, what actually ends up happening is you end up paying more money in the long run because you have to fix the mistakes, and it costs you more in tax and all of that sort of stuff.
And that literally, that was like the buy cheap, buy twice. I've heard that many times, but that was the first time when I was like, oh my God. Like I was taken for a bit of a ride because I was young, because I didn't know I didn't know the questions to ask. And also I didn't feel that I were able to ask questions. Whereas now, where I am now, I've got a great accountant. I can ring her with the maddest of questions, and I know she'll never judge me, and I bloody love that, because that gives me a little bit of freedom with the stupid questions.
So, do you think people treat you differently when it comes to money in your business? So whether it's your accounts, whether it's your tax, whether it's your proposals going out for new clients, the value that you guys bring to the table, do you think people treat you differently because of your age?
Sometimes, but then I also think confidence plays a part in that. So when I was younger, I remember invoicing like my first 1,000, and I was so nervous. And I like Stephanie, who was like one of my first coaches, kind of was like, "Yeah, this is the price of what it is that you need to do. Like, go do it." And then I slowly started like getting more and more confident. And then I think now it's more of like Lydia in the team. She's our account manager, and she sends all the proposals out. She's a little bit younger than me, and her opinion on we'll do a quote, and I'll be like, "It's too much." And I'm saying that because I've had a sales call. I don't actually know what the budget is of the client in these cases. I'm like, "It's too much." She's like, "No, it's not. That is what we're gonna charge." And what I mean by that is, I think with how the confidence she has with the prices she puts together, like there's no stopping her, and therefore when you get an email or when you talk to her on the phone, like she's very confident in what she's giving out. I think when I was younger, I weren't confident, and that was maybe an issue. But then I do think there is a few clients that maybe are a little bit like, you're only a kid, why are you charging me this? But it's a case of, again, it goes back to the value that we add and the end product.
And I think I think you're bang on. Confidence plays a huge role in the way that we behave around money. I wrote about this in the book, like the way we have grown up around money, the way that we've experienced money, whether it's from an investment perspective or spending it or losing it or overpaying for stuff or whatever. Our own relationship with money and the confidence that sits with that is such a big indicator in the way that we'll perform with money in our life in the long run. So do you have any bad money habits?
I have many, but I had this same conversation yesterday with Alfie, one of our new starters. He was on about at college he used to get like a Greg's 3 times a day, and I was like, the first step of changing anything is being aware of it. And then if you do nothing about it, at least you're aware, like you can make yourself feel better. I should prep my food the night before. I like to save me loads of money in meal deals, but I like having a walk to Tesco's and saying hello to the cashier. Like, so it's like those little bits that is the walk to the fridge. Is it worth the £2 I'll save? I don't know. And then I love a Nando's, maybe too much. Maybe I have too many Nando's. And then,
now it's not necessarily a bad money habit if you can afford it, right?
Yeah. No, that's true. But also I could have more money if I didn't, if that makes sense.
Well, you could, but also there's a layer of, you need to live your life, right?
Which is exactly my opinion.
It's all to do with goals. If your goal is to have as much money as physically possible, then you want to squirrel it all away. If actually you want to live your life a little bit and have a bit to put away and a bit to keep, then there's a balance to be had.
Yeah. And I think the way that I square it in my head is like, my wage, if you like, is all disposable. None of that goes into savings. That's all money that I want to spend that month. But then there'll be a separate bit that I take, which is just for savings, and that won't be touched. That's like ring fenced in a few different accounts. So I am careful in that respect as well, if that makes sense. But again, it's all about the lens that you brought up in. Like you said about the early kind of bits with money, there's a lot of stuff that I do that in my parents' eyes, maybe like, why are you wasting money on that? But in my eyes, it's similar to what you've just said. Like, I work hard, so this is what I want to do. I am. I think the thing now that I think's, well, dangerous, that I haven't got into, but I think would be good to talk about, is credit and how dangerous that is for young people now and how easy it is. I think I was so shocked the other day when one of my pals got something on Klarna or whatever, but it's like it comes up as an Apple Pay card. And it's like, my whole thing is when we work with charities or we work with like anyone who needs donations, is like, how can you reduce the friction between someone watching a video and therefore feeling moved and then wanting to donate money to you? Like, I don't want to watch a video, feel sad, and then click a link to then put my billing details in. I can't be bothered with that. But if I click a link, it takes me to Apple Pay, I'm laughing. Point that I'm trying to make is, if you're going to buy something on ASOS and you've got a party tomorrow and you click pay and you've not even thought about the fact that you want to credit it and it's just there as an option, it's one click, that is so scary. And I think then there's the side bit of that as well, is subscriptions. Like, as a young person, how easy it is to set up a subscription and then forget about it is crazy as well. So that's not that I have like massive issues with those two things. Like I said, I've never used Klarna and or anything like that. I don't want to risk it. But what is interesting that is like, as a society of people around my age, that is something I do see as a big issue. But then secondly to that is how easy it is now to just generally spend money on rubbish is crazy as well.
I think on the credit cards and credit generally, like, you're right, things like Klarna, anywhere where you're splitting payments, like what people don't necessarily think about is they think, oh, it's 20 quid a month for 3 months, but they forget that they've already got 10 different monthly things that they're paying for 3 months, 6 months, whatever. And it's the cash flow, like, going the wrong way that becomes the biggest problem. So like for me, I got into £60,000 of credit card debt, and it was all right because it was all on 0%. So it wasn't costing me anything until my 0% ended. And then I was like, shit, I can't afford this. I don't know how to afford it. I don't know what to do with it. And that I think, interestingly, like that was 10 years ago, access to credit is targeting young people. I see, you know, I'm in my 40s and I see, you know, I was in JD Sports the other day buying some trainers to come away with. And like all over the tills, it's like pay with Klarna, pay with Klarna. And I get it. Klarna's a business and I get it. You know, it means that you get the sale in the shop and JD Sports is probably selling more trainers because people can split the payments. But from a society perspective, from a duty of care perspective, is it the right thing? I'm not convinced that it is, because
and I think the education side of it, which you've mentioned there, like mentioning cash flow for personal finances and stuff, I don't think people, if they're employed and they're not in like a financial position when it comes to work and stuff, they might not know what cash flow means or how, like you've just said there, the impact of kind of bills piling up. It might only be like a small amount monthly, but that added on to everything else is stressful. But it's like the lack of education is an issue, and also, but then it's like the dangers and what is possible now with ease is crazy. But then the flip side of it, which I think is nuts of all of this, is took me ages to get my first credit card. I think my credit score is absolutely rubbish because I don't like buying stuff on credit and I avoid it. And so then that's the whole other interesting part, is like you have one side of people that are just doing it all day, and then the other side of people that haven't dared do it because it's scary.
That's because people that are cautious with their money, you're not the client that the banks want, really. The banks want people who are reckless with their money, because when you do not manage your money well and you get into lots of debt, they make more money.
That's when
right?
they win. Yeah.
So, which is why they throw money at young people. So like when I turned 18, I had credit card offers, I had all these different things. And actually I hadn't had any sort of financial education at all to really tell me what I should and shouldn't do. I'd left home by then. So I was on my own making these financial decisions. Like I left home at 17 before I was even allowed a credit card.
Wow.
And, you know, all of a sudden I'm like, oh yeah, I'll have all this money. I've got a student loan around the same sort of time. I was going to university. I was going out a lot, drinking a lot, partying a lot. And I just put it all on plastic all the time. And then that's not helpful. No one ever sat me down and said, actually, you have to pay this money back at some point. I was like, oh, this is just free money in my mind at the time. And I think it's a real shame that we've got a whole, like probably 2 generations of people who are going into like young adulthood in so much debt because of things like Klarna. And then you get to the point where you're like, well, I want to save up for a house, or I want to start renting, or I want to leave home, or I want to have a family, or I want to get married or whatever. And that then becomes, you need big money for all of those things. Yeah. People are already stuck and tied into the debt because that's the first thing that came along. It then keeps them a bit stuck, right? So, and again, you must see this in your friend group, I'm assuming, not so much you, but you must see it.
Yeah. And that's scary. I think that's the other part about, you've got to really start. This is what blew my mind. Speaking to my accountant a few years ago, she's like, and it sounds simple, but it blew my mind. It's like, you've got to start thinking about buying a house now. And I was like, in my head, that's crazy. That's an adult decision you make when like you want to buy a house. And in my head, it's a decision you'd make at 26, 27, I want to buy a house now, bang. But with how hard it is to get a mortgage and get a house and the money that you need for all that, like, I understand why it's a case of like, not, like finding about that early, but I'm quite fortunate that I've started thinking about that earlier. Whereas what you talked about there about friends and stuff is, or people that, not necessarily my friends, but people that I do know of that are in that position that you mentioned of being quite happy and reliant on credit, the switch up they would have to make to then start thinking about a house is massive. Yeah. And then you look at like the stories you hear about people, it taking people years and years and years to kind of get out of the parents' house and get a house. It doesn't help with that problem.
No,
it's
definitely
crazy.
Doesn't. And it's a real shame, I think, because actually there's some really small things you can do that financially set you up like really, really well. And it is things like you just adjust the way you're spending. And I'm not saying never have a Nando's ever again, but even if you took like, if you had 10 Nando's a month, just for argument's sake, if instead you had 6 and had 4 Nando's where you put into the S&P or you put into dividend stocks or something like that, for the next 10 years, actually that would compound at such a rate that you'd probably save up a deposit for a house, because the compounded interest on top of it would be bit that would make the difference. And again, I think compound interest is something that everybody should be taught about, but they're not. I suppose, do you know what compound interest is? I'm curious to know.
Yeah, that was one thing actually that I think I learned at school actually. That was something that as soon as it was a podcast episode, Bart that sat down with somebody, I can't remember who it was, but they started speaking about investing and about Hargreaves Lansdown, and they actually explained, like, get Hargreaves Lansdown, invest money here, set up a direct debit, whatever. And that was so helpful because it was almost like hand-holding, and it weren't behind a paywall, or it was a conversation that almost ended up talking about this thing that it didn't feel like they were selling anything, and they weren't winning out of it. It was just information. I love that. So yeah, that's what, but I have so many conversations with people, my pals. I'm like, why don't you whack your money in the S&P 500 or whatever? And they're like, what's that? Or they don't understand what compound interest is, or they feel like it's almost a scam because it feels too good to be true. And that's
too good to be true. Yeah. So I was talking to a friend of mine not that long ago, and we were talking about how the marketing around, the messaging around bank savings accounts versus the messaging and the way that society understand investment, right? So we've, as a society, not us, but generally the general masses, have been convinced that putting your money in a savings account with a small interest with the bank is the safest place for your money. That's what everyone says. It's the safest place. And that investing, even though there's an opportunity that it might go up, is really high risk. That's what we've been led to believe, right? But the reality of this is that money sat in a savings account is guaranteed to lose value. It's guaranteed to lose value because of inflation. So it doesn't matter how much money you've got sat in a savings account. It doesn't matter what your interest rate is. The interest rate will be less than what inflation is, unless something wild happens differently in the next few years. But actually, that is the fact. Your money will lose value over time. Versus, okay, it might go down in value, but it might go up. It quite often goes up. We've been convinced that a guaranteed loss is better than a potential gain, and I don't understand how they've done that.
Yeah, well, it's if it was to go really deep, it doesn't benefit the banks or your bank if you was to take the money elsewhere potentially. Another bit, I think it's an easy sell. Like the fact it's can be worded as risky, or there's a lot of stories of people that have done it wrong and ended up like
with losses.
But that's the bits you hear about. You don't hear about the fact you should split it into a few little bits, or the fact that there is safer areas for your money when it comes to investment, as opposed to, and like almost the risk of the choice of risk is yours. It depends how much you can afford to lose this money, or how much you could gain out of something. So, but again, it always goes back to education. I think that's the scary part. There's not a sexy way of learning about this type of stuff that sets you up to win, that is then marketed to the people it needs to be seen by, and that's the issue. But the people that will win out of that will be the end user, and not the people that don't want you to win. And that's the issue why it doesn't happen, and that's sad.
So let's talk a little bit about financial ambitions, right? So you're a very successful businessman. You're 23 now. Have you got in the future, like 10, 15, 20 years from now, when you're like my age and old, where do you see your financial ambitions? Like, do you drive yourself towards financial targets at all? Or do you purely just look around like production, creativity and impact?
We've started really thinking about this year about like financial targets and stuff, which should be very helpful. So I'm more and more driven about, we have it written on the whiteboard in the office, on like revenue and that I'm really in that kind of, the whole team is aware of the power of us hitting these numbers and what that will achieve. I want to break 1 million very soon in revenue, and then I want to, my whole like 10, I don't have a plan in 10, 15, 20 years or anything. I just know that I want a massive house with a swimming pool that my family can come to and have a swim. That's there. And then another part is I want to start thinking almost like the business is 5 now, and it's almost like my lifestyle has given, I've almost sacrificed a little bit of my young life to enable the growth of this business. Like my pals went to uni and they had parties every week, and it's like I was working then. But it's a case of now I'm starting to think a little bit about there's a business case of us having an office in Australia. I see a full reason as to why the time zones could really benefit us, and also like the lifestyle over there is beautiful. So I'd love an option to be able to do like a hybrid kind of summer here, summer there type of thing.
You were there recently, weren't you?
Yeah, for a whole week. Yeah, Sydney. Got back last week, and it blew my mind. So yeah, I think more of it is just being comfortable with the season of life, if that makes sense. So like, I was happy for the last 5 years to really grind, and I still am. Like that, I'm not saying I don't want to do that, but that's a little bit of a case of now I'm thinking about how can I be more comfortable, or what can I do that will really make me happy. And like Australia is that, but then in the future it will be being able to provide on a big scale back home. So yeah, I don't have like a vision board in relation to this is a car that I want or anything like that. I just know that I want to be able to, whatever I want at the time, I want to be able to get myself and get people around me. So yeah, I don't put too much energy on that, apart from the fact that I want to keep growing this to be the biggest, best production company in the whole world. And then, like I said earlier, what comes with that will be incredible stuff. But I also think there's like, similar to too many cooks in the kitchen, or can be too many things that you want, or too many focuses to have at one time, and then it becomes a little bit diluted. My whole focus on, if I do a good job here, then the fruits will come.
Consequence of doing a good job, right? 100%. Yeah. So would you say that where you are now in your life, do you trust yourself with big chunks of money?
I think so, because I look at like, we've got the most in our bank account as a business than we ever have before. And it's consistently gone up this year, which is fantastic. So I'm very glad that I've not used that as an excuse to go anywhere else.
So wild.
Yeah. No. So to that question, yeah, I do. And I think there is times though as well where I allow myself to be a little bit younger. So there's a purchase I made last month, which at the time felt like I needed to make it quite spenny. And then this month I'm looking at like the profit and loss from last month, and I'm like, that number could be higher if I decided not to spend on that thing. It was a thing for the business. It weren't like an expensive piece of clothing or something. But
that's like an investment, right? So it's not necessarily spending; it's investing back in the company.
Yes, yeah. But it's like one of those where I know I was very biased at the time towards the decision. It weren't a fair. Do you know what I'm trying to like? If I had the information available to me now that I had then, maybe I would have decided not to. But it's So but again, like, I think allowing myself to make mistakes is something I remember when I sent the money, I'm like, if it doesn't work out, then I just won't do it again. Like, and it's like, I won't do it again. And that's a much stronger position to be in than someone telling you, Sarah, don't do that. Because it's a case of like, we're humans, we need to learn from our mistakes. And also learning from our mistakes is I think the strongest way for us to actively learn. I always said when I was a kid, like, if you said to me, don't format an SD card before you've backed up the footage, so delete all the footage, I'd have said, of course. And there were times when I was a kid where I'd do a shoot for a client and then accidentally format the card instead of copying the card over. And it's like, right, I've just wasted a whole day of everyone's time filming and no one will ever see the results of it. But I did that once, never did it again. Point is that, like, that type of learning I think is very important, and I like to allow myself to do that because everyone knows themselves better than anyone else knows themselves. I know my best way of learning is by just don't do it again, mate. Fine, I won't.
Just be better than next time.
Yeah, exactly.
So do you think that there's any lies that we're told about money that have impacted you and the way you see money, approach money, make decisions with money?
Interesting. I think, well, going back to like my childhood, I think, I think money is this nasty thing, and I think that no one really speaks about it. What is interesting is been to America a few times this year, shot in Hollywood in Los Angeles, and it was so interesting. It was Danny Wallace, and she did a pitch from stage. I saw her do it in Manchester when we were filming, and I saw her do it in LA. And the reaction in Manchester when she mentions money, it was like everyone's head goes down a little bit and no one wants to speak about it. In LA, she put like the prices on the screen and everyone jumped up and like supported her. And what's interesting is like the American dream mindset of how they speak about money is this positive thing and almost they're not worried about how they'll be portrayed or how they'll feel, compared to us over here where we're very guarded. We won't speak about it. We're so worried about what other people will think, and that then doesn't help education. So my dad, for example, is a great example. I love my dad, he's great, right? But I remember asking him, like, how much money do you make a month? And he's like, he'll never tell me that. I still don't know now. But my reason for asking that is I'm trying to build evidence up to, this is the lifestyle that you live on this amount of money, so then I can have targets for my future. Yeah. But I still don't have a guideline. I still don't know what the money that he brings in, how that impacts the house and family, because I don't know what that number is, because it's such a protected thing but I think it's a societal issue that is quite big. And I genuinely do think, right, if everyone was more open, if teachers were more open about what they were paid, I think if everyone were, and it was almost like when you're a kid at school, you're almost driving to or walking to school, and on everyone's backs were like the amount of annual money they get a year. Not that would ever happen. That for the thought of thinking bigger and understanding how your choices in life can affect your future is so important. And I'm not saying money is everything, but I'm saying that a lot of young people do have money as a driver, but don't then know where to go or how to get the money that they're after, because we've not taught them the best industries to get into or the best jobs to have or anything like that, which is just crazy. It's like this horrible thing where you're trying to walk through a forest and just guess and just, maybe this is the right thing or maybe this is, and it's just, you don't know until you know. And that's why, and that's also I think why as well, this is getting really deep now, maybe this is not the case, I'm making jumps, but a lot of young people now, not my guys, because we have such a great place to work, but my generation of people, there's this thing about jumping jobs and like every year moving to a different thing. And I think that then goes back to exactly what I just mentioned about the potential of, this job may be higher to get me to where I want to be in my life here, but then them allowing themselves to hop much faster than we used to do back in the olden days. So olden days, that makes everyone sound old.
I'm not sure you qualify to be able to use that, Sam, actually.
Yeah, I rambled there, but that's
I think
my thoughts.
I think it's really interesting, and you know that the way we approach money in Britain, for sure, is very different to other parts of the world. You know, like I spend a lot of time in Ibiza. I've been to LA as well, so I've experienced LA and how they are with money there. And obviously, I spend a lot of time with clients in the UK and other parts of the world. And I talk about money. The reason I wrote the book is because nobody's having this conversation. Nobody's talking about how money really works and how people with not a lot of money can have a life with a lot of money with some very simple changes. And, you know, that question, that's really interesting. So like, I bet if I asked like my nan and granddad when I was younger, like how much money do you actually earn? I don't think they'd have ever told me. Yeah. Because there is this taboo around how you can't ask for it. I remember being in my recruitment job in like 2010 maybe. And I remember asking someone in the office, like, how much they were paid, like what their wages were compared to mine. And my boss pulled me in the office and was like, you can't ask that. I was like, what do you mean? They were like, it's a disciplinary if you ask people what they earn. And I was like, what do you mean? Like, why can't I know that? Because I wanted a benchmark. Like, in my mind, they were really successful. They were really established. They had a great desk. They were billionaires of money. And I was like, well, if I ask them how much they're earning, if I do that, that's how much I'll earn. And it gave me like a pathway to follow. But I wasn't allowed. I was pulled in the office, dragged over the coals and told you're never allowed to ask that question. And we have to get more comfortable talking about it.
But then this is what interesting as well with me. And I went traveling in January, and I literally got back, and I was on a panel of creatives in Leeds, and there was a guy who put his hand up, and he was American, and he was like, could you tell me how much money your average job is? Because I'm building a production company here. And I kind of did the politician's answer, because I'm similar. It's like I'm talking about this societal issue, but I'm not helping. But then his feedback was interesting. He's like, in America, he'd put his hand up and say, what do you charge? And they'd be open and honest, not worried about we're all got a scarcity mindset. I think that, you're going to take this job, or if you're going to undercut me or whatever. And that's in business, not in even personal finance. But like, it's inspiring to know that there's other places, maybe everywhere else, bar us, which don't come from that scarcity mindset and come from the, like, wouldn't it be great if that guy went, I'm on this amount of money, 70 grand a year, and then you go back then and your boss is like, that's your carrot, like, chase that. The increase in motivation that would have for you would have been massive. But then it's the scarcity mindset of, well, we might have had to offer him that job, more money, and on like this separate pathway that no one else can be part of. Or it all goes back to scarcity mindset, not going back to the possibility of what if that information makes you then build more than that other guy and makes the company win even more. It's just, it's crazy.
So with that in mind, do you, and also knowing your background, knowing obviously the message you will have had from your parents growing up, the way society is in the place that you grew up, are you actively trying to change that like processing of money and conversation, things like that, in the environments that you're in? So in your office, with your friends, if you ever have kids, like, is that something you're actively making sure that you don't follow the pattern of, or do you forget?
So I am no. So I am trying to change. It's what I said earlier about the figures in the office are so clear for everyone to see. They can see what turnover looks like, and then they can look at what leads tracker looks like in relation to the jobs we've won. I think that's so important for them to then realise how if we win, they'll end up winning as well in relation to wages and stuff. Second part is them. I get people say it honestly to me sometimes. They pull me aside and say, Sam, you talk about having a young team, that's because you can pay them less, right? And I'm like, what do you take me for? These guys are all on like industry standard wages. Young. The only differentiating factor is they are younger, which I think qualifies them more for the content that they create because they watch it every single day. Yeah. And then the other part of it is when I go to schools and stuff. Again, it happened last week. I do a talk at a school. I say, any questions? A kid puts his hand up because, are you rich? That's a question. And then I've got teachers looking at me and I get a bit imposter syndrome. I'm like, I don't want to. So then my default reply is, I've got 11 wages to pay every single month. Like, do with that what you will. Not necessarily my personal wealth, but looking at the success of the business, whatever. But yeah, again, that's interesting. I could do a better job.
Why don't you just say, why don't you answer like, well, I earn this?
Because I'm then worried, right? This is what's interesting then. I'm worried about the teachers who look at me with that look on the face that I'm sure they would have of, how dare he, or how dare he be younger than me and earn that. Or also, but he's just pulled the veil now of all these year sevens that now they then feel they can ask this to anyone else, which they should do. But I don't want to be, I don't want to cause them rubbish. Do you know what I mean? But that's yeah, it's we need a big reset. I don't want to be the guy in a lesson with 4 teachers looking down at me at the end and go, because I'm a very like, I take stuff very personally as well. If a teacher didn't talk to me afterwards because I've outed the amount of money that I pay myself, I'd be worried.
Fair enough. That's fair enough. So I could chat to you about this for ages, but we're running out of time. So I'm going to wrap up with what we do at the end of every episode is we ask our guests to leave a question for our next guest, and then we ask you the question. So the question that was left for you is, how would you like to be remembered?
Wow, deep. Someone who like makes every room better when they've left it than they found it, and it's so the same as everyone else, but to make the world a better place. But zooming into that is give young people opportunities to therefore then change the perception of young people generally. I always talk about, the news always says young people vape, they stab people, whatever, but I've got a team in there of incredible people are all young, but absolutely incredible, and they just show what happens when you've got someone who believes in them and they've got and they're given an opportunity. That's the two things that young people need to thrive. And then finally, I'd say in relation to like the content that we produce, really quickly, we made an advert in 2022. It got 40 million views. It was bigger than John Lewis. It was our own thing, tiny budget, and it was about the cost of living crisis. Strangely, talking about money, and we showed the impact that it had on a dad who was breaking down because he couldn't get his son a Christmas present. That got 40 million views and was bigger than John Lewis. And the comments on the advert, even now, that are still coming in now, are people saying how they've changed how they're celebrating Christmas because of the issue that we've showcased. So people in there that were like, I'm buying my kid something half as expensive as I was planning to because I'm going to donate the rest to charity. I've watched this video and I'm now going to buy myself £500 worth of gifts to give to my local community. Like, we created something that made people change how they behave. That is the power of video content. We showcased that in a perfect way and therefore made the world a better place. So that made the world a better place, but with my little niches I've just mentioned.
I love it. Thank you so much for that. And then what question would you like to leave for our next guest?
Great question. What did you want to be when you were older? Like, what was when you were a kid?
When you were younger, what did you want to be when you grew up?
Yeah, because I think that's interesting, and how that question relates to money and all that sort of stuff is interesting. So yeah, what did you want to be when you were older?
That. Amazing. Sam, thank you so much. If people want to get in touch with you, to connect with you on socials or work with you in any way, what's the best way for people to link up with you?
Just type Sam Teale, Teale, into any social media platform. Instagram, probably the best one. If you want to work with us, Sam Teale Productions, just Google it and we can get on a call. But yeah, if you want like good content that is not boring, made by an incredible team, we're the best people to speak to. But thank you, Sarah. I'm so thankful to have been here, and we've had a great conversation. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your time.
We're officially the youngest person on your podcast. Have I been the youngest person?
At this point, yeah, you are.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
I want a certificate, please, that says that. Thank you.
Send you a sticker.
Thank you so much for getting to the end of the podcast episode. I really hope that you enjoyed it. I just wanted to take this opportunity to remind you that the weekly Money Mechanics newsletter is available to you completely free. This is a newsletter that I'm going to send out every week to just give you some ideas around what's happening in the markets, what's happening at a global level, what's happening at a lot more local level, so that you can better understand what you can do with your money to make it work for you for the future. I'm also going to share in the newsletter what I'm doing in my own portfolio, just to give you some insights into what my ideas are, why I'm making the decisions that I'm making, in the hope that it will help you to make those decisions in your own portfolios as well. All you've got to do is find the link that's with this episode, hit the link and subscribe, and that newsletter will start to come out to you every single week. I'd also really love to take this opportunity to invite you to drop me a review. I love the opportunity of getting to share these podcast episodes with you. It really helps me to better understand how we can do the best job that we can here at Money Mechanics if you tell us your feedback. So drop us a review, tell us the sort of guests that you want, talk to me and connect with me on Instagram, talk to us on YouTube, wherever you are hanging out. Tell us how you're finding it, and we can make this the very best podcast it can be. Thank you again for being such a valued listener. I appreciate you all, and I'll speak to you soon.